So here's another story for you. Those of you who came a few weeks ago, we had a wonderful Lama visit named Mingyur Rinpoche. Remember him? The people who were here. Beautiful young Tibetan Lama. Very articulate and sweet. Anyway, in his book, he writes a story about a Tibetan couple who had just gotten married, and the bride moved into her husband's home. Immediately, she started having conflict with her stepmother, or excuse me, with her mother-in-law, over a number of issues. The mother-in-law wanted things to be this way, and this is how the household should be run. And I think the whole set of mother-in-law stories are particularly, I mean, we have them in our culture, but that they're particularly difficult and poignant in some ways in the cultures where you are pretty much bound to go into the house of the man you marry in those cultures, and in a certain way serve your husband's mother. So this is one of the. I mean, that's the truth of that particular cultural dynamic. It's the way that it's happening. So you can imagine there are a lot of stories about that. And this is a traditional story about it. So they're in their struggle, which is not, is painful and not uncommon. And gradually their disagreements escalated until the new bride and her mother-in-law couldn't even stand to look at each other, and yet they were living under the same roof. The bride saw her mother-in-law as an interfering old witch, while the mother-in-law thought her son's young bride was an arrogant child with no respect for her elders. There was no real reason for it to get as bad as it did, but eventually the bride became so angry that she decided she had to do something to get the mother-in-law out of the way. So she went to a doctor and asked for poison that she couldn't put in her mother-in-law's food. Telling you, this is serious stuff. After hearing the young bride's complaint, the Tibetan doctor agreed to sell her some poison. But, he warned, if I were to give you something strong that worked immediately, everyone would point their fingers at you and say you poisoned your mother-in-law. And they'd also find out that you bought the poison from me, and that wouldn't be good for either of us. So I'm going to give you a gentle poison that will take effect very gradually, so she won't die right away. He also instructed her that while she administered the poison, she should treat her mother-in-law very, very nicely. Serve every meal with a smile, he said. Tell her you hope she enjoys the food. Ask her if there's anything else you might bring her. Be very humble and sweet, and that way no one will suspect what you're doing. The bride agreed and carried the poison back home with her. And that very evening she started adding the poison to her mother-in-law's food and very politely offered the meal to her. And after a few days of being treated so respectfully, the mother-in-law began to look at her daughter-in-law a little bit differently. Maybe she's not quite so arrogant as I thought. Maybe I was a little bit wrong about her. And day by day, and little by little, she started treating her daughter-in-law more agreeably, complimenting her on the cooking, on the way she managed the household, even exchanging tidbits of stories. As the old woman's attitude and behavior changed, of course, so did the girls. And after a few weeks, she started thinking, maybe my mother-in-law isn't as bad as I thought. In fact, she's being pretty nice now. And this continued for a month or two until the two women actually started to become friendly. They started getting along so well that at a certain point the girl stopped poisoning her mother-in-law's food. Then she started to worry because she realized she already put so much poison in every meal that her mother-in-law would likely die, and soon. So she went back to the doctor and told him, I made a mistake. My mother-in-law is actually a nicer person than I thought. I shouldn't have poisoned her. Please help me out and give me an antidote to the poison I gave her. The doctor sat very quietly for a moment after listening to the girl. I'm very sorry, he told her. I can't help you now. There's no antidote. On hearing that, the girl became terribly upset, started to weep, swearing she was going to kill herself. Why would you want to kill yourself, my daughter, the doctor asked. And the girl answered, because I poisoned someone who turns out to be a nice person and now she's going to die, so I should take my own life to punish myself for the terrible thing I've done. Again, the doctor sat quietly for a moment, and then he started to chuckle. "How can you laugh about this?" she shouted. "Because there's really no need for you to worry," he replied. "There's no antidote to the poison because I never gave you any poison to begin with. All I gave you was a harmless herb. And so now go home and live as you might well together." That's the end of the story. This mother-in-law story from Tibet. But what you can hear from it is echoed by Thomas Merton, where he wrote, "Do not depend on the hope of results. You may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless and achieve no result at all, if not perhaps bring about its opposite. And as you get used to this idea, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself." And so it's not through violence, or it's not through hatred, or it's not through the making of the other that our life is happy or that the world is healed. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. The quality of presence and respect and spaciousness of heart is that which begins to transform the circumstances.